How how would I tell if I were madly in love with somebody that this person is more likely than another person to abuse me?
It's really hard because they groom people. So an abusive person
What do you mean they groom people?
They will do what they can to get somebody to trust them. They will love you more passionately than you've ever been loved. They will do things for you, and this is true for all of the perpetrators, whether it's domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are people are so afraid of this sexual assault perpetrator that's hiding in the bushes in the alley. That's probably not who you need to be afraid of.
Who's going to come out and beat you over the head immediately.
It happens. It happens. It happens. But more likely, you know the person. It's somebody that you trust. It's somebody that you let your guard down in front of. It's somebody who has shown you a lot of attention. And that's the same with domestic violence, with human trafficking too. They trick this person into believing that they really care about them. And then it starts to have this tension building phase. And during that time, things seem a little off and you're afraid, like anything's going to make them upset and you don't know really what's happening and why.
Honey, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Walking on eggshells is what you hear it referred to. And then there's the explosive phase. And at that point, that's when there's something abusive. And we will help people way before it needs to be physical. So please do not wait until somebody has thrown a punch or kicked you or anything like that. We help them at those beginning red flags. And so after the explosive incident, when that person thinks, oh, I need to leave, this isn't safe, I need to go, then it goes back around to this honeymoon phase of the, I love you so much, and
please don't leave me.
I wouldn't
I'll
do
kill
that
myself.
exactly. There's the threats, or there's, I wouldn't do it if I wasn't drinking. Well, you know what?
Well, honey.
If every time I drank grape soda, I hit somebody, I would give up grape soda, right? I would choose orange. And so that's the thing, is that it just goes into this cycle that repeats itself. And eventually that honeymoon phase can go away because just the explosive incident and the tension are enough to keep that person in that relationship. So if anybody kind of wonders if this is what's going on, or they have a friend or a relative and they wonder, they can call our crisis line and we can talk them through, are these red flags that you should be concerned about? And even in teen dating violence relationships, we see teen dating violence worse and worse every year.
Wow.
And so, and younger, and especially now that there's so much cell phones and all of that kind of stuff, social media, so much more of that is happening really, really young. And so just give us a call and we'll talk you through it.
I knew a woman who was married to somebody she hated, who didn't treat her right, and she didn't treat him right, but her first boyfriend was a man who opened up doors for her and held chairs for her, and she didn't think that was manly. That's not how a real man behaves, because that's how she grew up.
I was going to say, it probably has something to do with what she saw as a child. And we see that people who, that more often than not, about 15% of our victims are male, so 85% are female, but we do serve a lot of male victims. But we, more often than not, if children are exposed to domestic violence, if they're going to be in a domestic violence relationship when they're older, females will end up as a victim and males will end up as a perpetrator. And a lot of it has to do with what they saw. And if you think about it, if you grew up in a house where there were big dogs that were like barking, kind of aggressive dogs, and you always were around it your whole life, then if you're walking down the street, you see a big aggressive dog, you're not that scared of it. You've seen that dog before, right? And that's what we see in the dating relationships. They grew up around anger and abuse and screaming. They might not see it as a red flag when they see it in a relationship. That's just what things are like.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
And for the perpetrator side too, whether it's the male perpetrator, female perpetrator, we see that this is how the person and their family got their point across. This is how they made sure that the other people heard them. And so they keep drawing on that tool set that they had as children.
Because we get used to what we're used to.
Right.
This is basic and ordinary.
And it's hard to relearn. It's as hard to relearn as when you fall, you put your hands out to catch you, right? There's these gut reactions. It's hard to relearn and to stop having abusive traits. And what they have to do is really, really want it, really get therapy, really try to change. And I believe it's possible, but it starts with that really, really want it.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen.
Right. Okay. You have this 800 number, which is 800-575-5352, and how often do you get does the phone ring?
Rings day and night. It's staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We get about 4,000 calls a year, and it rings all the time. It rings for people who want information for a family or friend. It rings for people who need help right this second. It rings for people who had something happen a few years ago, and they're at this point in life where they want to deal with it. They want to have somebody to talk to. So there's a wide variety of who's calling that phone number, but it's ringing day and night. Law enforcement calls it, and they'll have us respond with them on scene during a human trafficking bust or...
Excuse me, you said law enforcement calls it? Mm-hmm. So the cops call that number.
Right.
And why?
And we will dispatch an advocate to wherever they are on scene with a victim.
Okay.
Or to the hospital, or to a CPS call. And we will have an advocate there with the family, with the victim and the children, and to be at their side and help them through it. We respond to the hospitals after sexual assault has taken place, and we sit with the victim for the whole evidentiary exam, which can be sometimes 6-7 hours
that
they're
Lord.
in the hospital having an exam.
Pardon me? Goodness.
Yeah, it's horrendous, the trauma that happens after one of these incidents.
First is the attack, and then there's this examination that lasts. That can last for 7 hours?
It can. It doesn't always. Some are shorter, and it really depends on the extent of the violence that happened at the time. And it's, we'll try to play music. We'll try to make it soothing. We bring a bag of clothing, of brand new clothes, because their clothing is going to be taken as evidence. And we'll bring a stuffed animal. We have some people in the community who make homemade quilts, and we'll bring them a homemade quilt to wrap up in, so they're not just in the paper drape and the paper gown and everything's so sterile in a hospital. We make sure that they're as comfortable as they can be, and and we're really supportive, and we understand the dynamics of what they've gone through, and we're there to support them.
Wow.
They don't have to go through it alone. That's the thing. No matter which of these victim types you're talking about, whatever's happened in their life, they don't have to go through the aftermath alone.
No. Yeah. Okay. You say there are these volunteers.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, there are volunteers.
Yes.
Yes.
We could not live without our volunteers. Our volunteers are usually the ones responding to the hospitals. Our volunteers are the ones who are helping with childcare, so that the parent can get a life skills class or get therapy. They're helping go alongside somebody to court when they have a court appointment.
What training does one need as a volunteer?
It depends on the kind of volunteering they're wanting to do. In the state of California, anybody who's volunteering at a domestic violence rape crisis center has a mandatory 65-hour training at least. And so they have that.
Good.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
Yeah, it is really good. It's hard to get volunteers sometimes, though, because that's a big commitment. But once they're trained, they can volunteer at any agency in the state of California or be employed by one. And so that's really, really great. But people who might want to volunteer on the other side, maybe they want to do clerical work or help with an event or something, they can do that without any of that major training. They just come in for that day and learn what they're going to be doing that day. And we do have a big event coming up.
Okay.
If anybody wants to volunteer
When?
or a sponsor or come out, we have a run 1 month from today, October 1st. It's 5K, 10K walk or run, and it's at Sculpture Park. And they can sign up.
Say that again.
Sculpture Park.
Sculpture Park.
In Roseville,
Okay.
where the big pink sculpture is there by the freeway. And they can sign up on our website.
Okay.
And it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun during that event.
The October what?
October 1 first.
Okay. That's October 1 in 2016, in case you're seeing this in another year. But the 800 number has stayed the same.
Oh yes,
for years.
It's been years.
Okay, and how often have you had this fundraiser? This is a fundraiser?
Yeah, I think this is our 4th or 5th year.
Oh, cool.
It's got to be our 5th year, actually. Yes. Yeah.
All
so
right.
it's really great. People have a lot of fun.
Great, that's wonderful. And to volunteer, people should volunteer for Stand Up Placer. People should investigate at standupplacer.org.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Go to our website.
Yes, okay. So again, that's standupplacer.org. The crisis line is 800-575-5352. If you're in trouble, and it's not likely if you're watching this, because you probably won't be allowed to watch it, but if you know somebody or you recognize, how would you recognize this? How would a person recognize this?
A lot of times you know that there's this friend of yours, this family member of yours, and you can tell that they're being controlled. You can tell that they don't have the power of their own decisions of their life. I think they at least know that this isn't a healthy situation, and then they can call and ask for more information.
Okay, yeah. And so this is both men and women and children. Mostly women and children. And tell me the statistics again. This is
1 in 4 women will be a victim of severe domestic violence. 1 in 7 men. And then the emotional, financial, psychological abuse is 1 in 2. So it's happening a lot.
Yeah, yes. And how often do you get calls about
Human trafficking?
Human trafficking, yes.
You know, last year we had 10 people who we served that were human trafficking survivors, and they were served under our domestic violence or sexual assault services, because with human trafficking, that is part of it. And now this year that we have been designated as a human trafficking center, we have already served over 50 by June. I don't have the number as of today, but by June it was already 5 times higher. So it's happening a lot. It's happening in our community. It's anytime sex is exchanged for money and there's an element of force, fraud, or coercion, or if the victim, the person that's being used for sex, is under the age of 18, because at that point they are too young to consent to sex. So anytime one of those things is a factor, it's human trafficking. And we are the agency in our county to help.
Most people would call that prostitution.
They might, but it isn't.
It isn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if a person's under 18, they don't have the ability to consent, and so it's automatically human trafficking. Prostitution would imply that somebody had a choice, and this is a choice they're making for themselves, and they're criminal under the law. Very rarely does anyone have a choice.
Okay.
Very rarely. They're usually forced into something that they aren't really wanting for their life. Or they were trafficked as teenagers, and maybe they've had a few birthdays since then, but really their life choices aren't really their own to make at this point. They have been abused for so many years, and they're sort of trapped in this situation.
Yeah. I'm imagining that your hope is that stand-up placer will soon not be needed. Eventually.
Yeah,
wouldn't that be wonderful? That would be a paradise.
We would love to work ourselves out of a job. We would love, our vision is ending domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking in Placer County. Every one of us would love to have no reason to come to work today, because there just aren't any victims of these crimes. It's not something that we're seeing. Last year we served 2,500 survivors with 25,000 services. And so it's definitely,
God, this is bigger than I thought it was going to be. Wow, wow. I'm really happy that I asked you. I'm really, really happy.
So am I. Thank you.
Jenny Davidson, Executive Director of Stand Up Placer, thank you very much for joining me, for telling me this hopeful and useful information. If you're interested in learning more, please log on to standupplacer.org. If you have any questions or need help, call the crisis line 800-575-5352, or at least go on to the website. Thank you very much for watching. Jenny, thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you again.